We're gonna, right.
All right. Hey, guys.
Now we're live on both platforms.
Yes. This is Michelle.
And this is Mark. And this is Mark and Michelle,
yes.
Obviously. But anyway, we are on here tonight. We were going to talk about the symptoms that I recovered from.
If you don't have our first book that is free, called Buried Alive, One Man's Journey Out of Autism, this list is in the back.
It is. And it's a 2-page list.
Hi, Krista.
Hey, Krista.
And you can get it at www.healyourautism.com.
There you go. And
that's the free book.
That book is called Buried Alive, One Man's Journey Out of Autism. It's an excellent book. You'll really like it. Full of information. In fact, most of the reviews are just kind of awestruck at the amount of information in it.
Yeah,
so,
I've heard my brain is fried.
Yes, yes. And packed with information was another thing we heard.
Right.
What we're going to do tonight is talk about some of the symptoms that I recovered from. And we're going to go in depth into them because, it's funny. I've even come across a lot of autistic adults or adults with autism, however you want to say it, who don't really know their own autism. And I'm gobsmacked at that. If you're going to yell at me about autism, you better know what it is.
Well, we didn't know until we looked into it. I mean, we didn't even know you were autistic.
Well, I see your point, but what I mean is if you know you have it, yet you don't know what makes it up, you're going to come out looking ignorant. That's what I mean.
Got you.
And so we'll start. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 categories here. And, in fact, something hit me just now.
Yeah.
Let's start with communication.
Okay.
Because the biggest things in autism that are the most easily or readily identifiable as symptoms are communication and social issues. All right. So let's start with communication. All right. Now, I'm going to ask you a question.
Me? I guess it's me.
I'm not asking them. I'm asking you. Explicit communication is required when communicating, when interacting with an autistic brain. Okay? So, have you seen that to be the case in every student of yours with autism?
Yes. I've also seen it in ADHD.
Okay. Very interesting. So, when we're talking about explicit communication here, I'll give it what I think the definition is, and let's see how Michelle thinks of it. Explicit communication to me means very specific wording that is unambiguous in meaning and, quite literal in meaning as well. How would you say that stacks
Okay,
up?
I don't have yes. This is the answer. That's yes. But I don't have a dictionary mind like you do.
No, I understand.
So mine would be more like if you're going to say something that isn't, if you can't use idioms.
Idioms.
They don't mean anything to autistic people.
Hey, Arlene.
Hi, Arlene. You can't use... Analogies don't usually work.
Analogies, right? Exactly, like the one I heard from somebody here, and I'm 7 years later. I'm still going, what? Well, I don't think that's a check you want to take to the bank in cash, and that could mean so many different things.
Is that an analogy?
That is a turn of phrase. That is a, what is, an idiom would be one thing. Idiomatic speech, colloquialism. No, there's another word for it. I can't think of what that word is.
Cliche.
Cliche. There you go. That's pretty close.
You can't use cliches.
Yeah, you can't use cliches because those, they could mean you have to know the context to know the meaning when you use cliches. And if you can't figure out the emotional context of something, because your brain doesn't recognize the emotions around it, you're lost. And when I first heard that, that's not a check I would take to the bank in cash.
And Mark had recovered a little bit by the time you heard that phrase. That was GAPS diet, wasn't it?
Yeah, actually, I hadn't even started on recovery by the time I heard that phrase.
Okay.
Well, you know what? Maybe I had.
Well, wasn't that the guy in the cash office?
No, that was.
Didn't the guy in the cash office say stuff like
that? He did too.
Okay.
That was our human resources guy.
See, human resources people need an education on how to talk to ADHD and autism.
Yes, they do. And now
Mark was so clueless.
Well, I was. And
I don't mean that negatively. It's just he just didn't even. It wasn't there.
It was because
not available.
Of autism. Yeah. Well, and my abilities to see emotional context and social context, they're not there with an autistic brain. And I've heard some autistic adults say, "Well, yes, it is." Well, you know what? How come you had trouble figuring that out just now? Right. So, hey, Hera, how are you?
The other thing, though. You can't assume they know something.
Right.
When I teach an NT, I assume a lot that they already know something. Because if I've taught something, I assume that they have remembered that and can bring it to the next lesson. But an autistic person often has to be reintroduced to that concept for many lessons. And then they get it. It's that long-term memory thing. The lack of the short-term memory. I
will give you an example. This was maybe 4 years ago now. I think it probably was. It was about holidays of 2015.
So it was GAPS.
Still on GAPS. And my brain had recovered quite a bit, just not like it has now because of medical medium and that heavy metal detox movie. But Michelle and I were talking about someone's relationship. And she had mentioned something specific about their relationship. A few minutes went by, and we moved on to another subject. Then she picked up with the same subject about the relationship from minutes earlier. And all of a sudden, Cherie and Hera, just in case we didn't say hi, but she picked up talking about that relationship that we had talked about some minutes before. Now, if I was still, had I not recovered, if I was with the autism, here's what I would have said, huh? And what relationship are you talking about? That's what I would have done, right? I did not do that in this case. And from there on afterwards, what I did was, and I picked up right. In fact, I didn't even say that. It just, in my mind, I knew, she's talking about that relationship we talked about a few minutes ago.
Yeah, that was something that was not possible for him when he was autistic.
Right. Like she said, she had to constantly remind me of the subject we were talking about.
I would have to reintroduce. Okay, I'm going to talk about this person again, and here's what I'm going to say this time.
Mm-hmm. She had to constantly remind me of context.
And so, it's not like he's a bad person. It was because metals were in the way.
Yes.
Of receptors, maybe?
Yeah, memories. They weren't forming, the neurons for memories weren't forming correctly because metals were in the way.
Right.
And so explicit communication is always required. Reintroduction of context is always necessary.
Yes. It's a very tedious person to teach.
Yes.
Is an autistic person.
Mm-hmm. And ADHD, maybe not quite.
ADHD is different, but it's similar.
Mm-hmm. And so, again, doesn't make you a bad person. You just have autism or ADHD. You
just have metals.
Right. And so explicit communication is always required. Literal communication is always required, as literal as you can be, and because, believe me, there are some contexts that do not lend themselves to being described literally. Feelings for one.
Right.
Emotions for another. And there are a difference between feelings and emotions. I now know. Feelings to me are pure monotonic.
Nice word.
Right?
That almost sounds like music.
Kind of where I pulled it from.
Yeah.
Feelings are pure monotonic. They're not mixed with anything else. They're just complete joy, complete sadness, complete happiness, complete whatever. But they're just that. Emotions, however,
Can feel
mixed.
gross.
They can feel gross. They can feel very happy, but they can be a mixture. My first experience with more than one emotion at a time.
This was on gaps.
This was on gaps. And you've heard us talk. You've heard me tell the story. Michelle and I were going over to Mom and Dad's house. She said something that made me mad. Right? We get over to my mom and dad's house. I'm still mad. I'm giving her the death stare, And then she said something that was funny. So I'm laughing and I'm mad at the same time. That was weird.
Blew him out.
It did. That was weird. How can you do that? I mean, but you can. And I've since had that happen numerous times, not just being happy and sad at the same time. That's weird. But being mad and laughing at the same time, and I told her sitting there, this is weird. You made me laugh, but I'm still mad at you.
Yeah.
Right. And but it was actually fun too to feel that, which I don't think I've ever said that before.
No.
But it was fun to be able to feel two things at once, especially things that seem contradictory.
I think at that time you couldn't express yourself well enough to be able to say that was fun.
Yeah, probably not. Probably wouldn't have been able to recognize that as fun.
Yeah.
But so explicit communication is absolutely necessary. And because you're trying to get through the inability to see so much. Lynn!
What are you doing still awake?
I know, right? And she's probably flipping us off. We don't know. But definitely, your communication needs to be as unambiguous and vagueless. I don't know.
Is that a word?
I don't know, but it is now. Vagueless as possible. Of course, Lynn can probably tell us if there's a word specific. There we go. So let's move on to the next thing. Difficulty with implicit communication. Now, that is kind of what we've talked about a little bit in the past few minutes. But implicit communication, let's talk about what that is. Michelle says, when I teach NTs, I can assume that they already know a lot.
Right,
and
a lot of assumptions.
A lot of assumptions.
It's so easy to teach them.
Right. And now, healthy ones.
Well, as long as the metals aren't in that midline.
Well, yeah, I see what your point.
Everybody has metals, but when they're in the midline of the brain, that's when it starts causing issues.
Exactly. And the reason that causes issues, for those of you folks who don't know, the midline of the brain, the corpus callosum, is where all the connections are that connect one side to the other side. You start interfering with those connections, and the two sides of the brain don't communicate. And so that's why it's an issue. You need both hemispheres of your brain to work together to be able to communicate well. All right. Implicit communication. I want to explain what I mean. How many of you have seen the Monty Python sketch Nudge Nudge Wink Wink?
Me? Nudge nudge wink wink.
Right. When I first saw that skit, those were just actions to me. In fact, I need to see that. Taj! I need to actually probably see that again.
You probably need to see
because
it.
But the nudge nudge wink wink, there's a lot of communication that is in there that is being conveyed by physical behaviors and body language only.
And emotion.
Well, and emotion. Stuff that is not explicitly communicating anything.
Right.
Right? There is no explicit communication in that skit. In fact, I know that Michelle and I have carried on whole conversations, albeit short ones, whole conversations without using words at all. And that has only been since I started recovery, so starting with gaps. But we can look at each other now and go and communicate loads.
It's called telepathy.
Yeah. And your intuition works when your brain works. Mm-hmm. And so implicit means it's not explicitly stated.
So when you saw that skit, when you were Aspie, what did you see?
I just saw behaviors and words. I heard the words and knew that the nudge, nudge, wink, wink meant nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But I didn't.
Was it funny?
Not really.
Yeah.
Because it was just things that I saw.
Yeah.
I mean, and see, here you go, a joke. Jokes are always implicit. I mean, for NTs. And because I won't say always, but 95% of humor is implicit. Because I started getting humor only after a couple of years on the GAPS diet. And and most of the time I get it now, unless it's just some social situation I've never encountered before, you know. But now I understand humor because the implicit ideas in humor have to be understood implicitly, not specifically stated. That's why when you explain a joke, it loses its meaning.
Right.
It loses its humor. There we go. And so, and the inability to understand implicit communication is heavy metals, strep, and viruses, as are the requirement for explicit communication, right? Those three things, heavy metals, strep, and viruses, are what cause the inability, the being unable to communicate like that, all right? Do we want to move on to the third one?
Sure.
Okay. What time is it? The third symptom in communication is the inability to see nonverbal communication. Huge, huge thing to miss. And it's interesting. I'm going to tell this story. When Michelle and I first started this page, be almost 3 years now, we had a couple of autistic adult women on the page. They were trolling the page, really, although they didn't make any comments that I remember. And they knew the very basics of the story. I said I had recovered. They saw pictures of before and after. Before and after pictures are the before and after pictures are very different, and the difference between them is major.
Yeah.
Right. Their statement was, "We don't see any difference. He just lost some weight."
Yeah.
Really? Actually, the difference is less inflammation, weight loss, less weight.
Someone behind the eyes is the big one.
That was the other thing. There was a sparkle in the eye now that I didn't have then.
Yeah.
Right? And
you were vacant.
Right, exactly. And most people that I see with heavy metals are like that. And I see that in people who aren't necessarily autistic either.
Yeah.
So, and I thought that was funny because Michelle goes, "Man, they miss so much." And I said, "How can they miss that?" Michelle goes, "They're autistic. They can't see that."
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm like, "Yeah, true." You know, and if you're missing that, if you were able to miss the difference between two pictures, I guarantee you're missing a lot more than just the difference between two pictures, right? Let's talk about nonverbal communication. It's easy enough to know what this means, all right? But it's not easy to know the difference between and. It isn't. NTs get it. In fact, it's worlds of difference. It's worlds of difference for me now. But I never saw that as an autistic person. Never did. And it communicates two entirely different things.
Oh, our podcasters have no idea what you just did.
Oh, okay.
Then you gave us the finger.
Yeah, right. That's easy to see. That's explicit nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
Let's just label that. All right. That is explicit. The middle finger is explicit nonverbal communication. Implicit nonverbal communication, or less explicit, however you want to call it. What I did is I raised both eyebrows. Both eyebrows, like this, is kind of a mildly quizzical question to somebody. Kind of like, really? Did you mean that? See what I mean? Now, the second thing I did was raise my right eyebrow only. Or my left eyebrow, actually. Hard to get it here. That's why I failed organic chemistry. But I raised my left eyebrow mildly. Now.
And there was a furrow on the other side.
There was.
That's a difference.
But raising,
because I can go.
Right.
And that would be kind of sexy,
exactly.
Right? So you have to
know
describe.
But raising my left eyebrow and having my right one slightly furrowed is a much more serious quizzical look that says, are you really that dumb? I mean, that's what it communicates.
Yeah.
And more shock that, wow, did you really just do that? You know, to whereas both eyebrows, it's just like, wow, I'm a little amazed by that. But one eyebrow and the other one furrowed, it's like, wow, you're really stupid. Right? Now, raising both eyebrows with a slight smile around the eyes and around the mouth. See, I missed all of that. Well, that kind of looks crazy.
Thank you.
No problem. But
Mark says I look crazy when I raise both eyebrows.
And
podcasters.
Yeah, not both eyebrows. It wasn't just both eyebrows. It was both corners of your mouth. It looked like Groucho Marx with a couple of caterpillars. But all of those differences I missed as an autistic adult. And one of the symptoms of autism is not getting nonverbal communication, and that is nonverbal communication.
And guess what, guys? Mark recovered from those three things.
Sure did. I recovered from those, and now I get all of that. And all I had to do was remove the heavy metals, take care of the strep and the viral infections, and bam. Now, that didn't fix everything, but that fixed most of it. And so, for those of you who are naysayers, go on about your business somewhere else. I'm not interested in proving to you anything. Now, if you want to sit here and listen and learn, great. But that is the symptoms that we're going to cover tonight in communication. And we will move on to, I bet we'll just do the social stuff tomorrow. There's a good bit more in that.
It's a fun week in store.
It is, guys. All right. Continue with that celery juice, that heavy metal detox smoothie, and that lemon water. And remember, go to www.healyourautism.com/buy the book, BUY, the book. Download our book, Heal Your Autism's Do-It-Yourself Guide. Healing Begins in Your Kitchen. It's our detox guide. And
if you want this list of symptoms that Mark healed from, you go to the other page, which is
www.healyourautism.com. You can download Buried Alive, One Man's Journey Out of Autism
and
for
that
free.
one is free. Yes.
It is. So, guys, we will see you tomorrow night.
And we coach.
We do coach. And all you have to do is contact
Send us an email.
and we will set everything up. All right. We'll see you tomorrow night, guys. That was good.